Bishop Eugene Sutton.
Yes.
It is such an honor to have you here and one of the first people being interviewed in this
Wow.
new series of Christ Church podcasts. So thank you for being here tonight. And we have a few things that we want to talk about, but this is really free-ranging. So please, if there's something you want to speak about that I haven't said, please add to that. So let's just start with, 16 years as bishop of our diocese. It's flown by so fast.
Yes, as a matter of fact, I was at our Happening, which is our annual retreat for high school students, run by high school students from across the diocese. It was at the Claggett Conference Center, and I'm talking with those teenagers about matters, and it's my last time. I've been at all of them every year. And I was saying, good gosh, when I began, some of you were not born.
Right.
I knew that I made the right decision at the right time 3 years ago to say, I think after 16 years, I'll step away.
But they've been 16 really interesting years
Yes.
in our diocese. So would you reflect on some of that a little, the good, the bad, the ugly, and what's ahead for the diocese as you turn over the reins?
Okay, well, first of all, just to make it clear, it was March 29 of 2008 that I was elected. And I was elected on the first ballot. You have several ballots usually until you get a majority of clergy votes and a majority of lay votes. The last person to be elected in Maryland on the first ballot was Thomas Claggett, the first bishop of Maryland. And so I was honored, but it was also a big surprise. And so that was March 29. March 30, the next day, Sunday, I was scheduled to preach. I was the preacher at the National Cathedral. I was canon pastor there for 8 years. And so I walk into the pulpit, and I did notice that one of the lines in the gospel reading was Jesus is saying, "Don't worry about tomorrow, God will provide." And he had the line in there, "Consider the ravens. They neither sow nor or sleep, but God provides for them." And so I said to the congregation, I want you all to know now, I've been a lifelong Washington football team fan, but now I'm considering the Ravens.
An auspicious beginning.
That's right. So that was 2008, and what a wonderful gift that was, and it was a great honor. And also, I had a great sense that, boy, I don't know if I'm up for this. And I think probably every good bishop should have that sense. It's now 16 years, and I'm still wondering, am I up for this? At the time, early on, when I started in June, early on, I gave the diocese 5 goals I wanted to really attend to in the first couple of years. And those were my personal goals. And those goals were to earn trust. And I know that takes time. Another goal was to maintain my spiritual disciplines, because I kept hearing from everyone, the schedule is grueling and it's nonstop. And when I was at the cathedral in Washington, I ran the prayer center in the crypt level, the Center for Prayer and Pilgrimage. And it was my practice to go there every morning and in the dark and just pray. And then we gathered some people around. When I ended, there were 5 prayer groups that just met during the week there. And I said, well, despite the schedule, I got to keep in some way centering prayer. It's still my daily discipline, and I let people know I don't always get to it every day. But I have a discipline. I just don't get to it every day. And then another one was to really focus in on some stewardship of creation issues, environmental care issues. And I remember saying, when people would ask me, oh, you're the first African American, the first black bishop of this diocese that's been around our churches since 1620 something. And all of our bishops, the first bishops, and almost all of the clergy owned slaves.
Absolutely,
Yes.
including here in this parish.
Oh yes. And that was, understandable. Tobacco especially was a great crop, and you had to work the fields, and not many clergy were very good at cropping tobacco. And so there was the times. And so, and people would ask me, how does it feel to be the first black bishop? And I said, I'm very honored and I'm proud to be an African American. And I'm proud of this diocese for what it's done. But I said, ultimately, it's not about the color of my skin. It's about what I'm about. And one of the things I want to be about is environmental degradation. It's killing us, and especially the poor, and especially communities of color. So I said, rather than the black bishop, call me the green bishop. And so that became a moniker for a while.
I remember that.
Oh, yes, yes. But the other big emphasis I wanted to try to recover in the first couple of years was to recover and enhance the public role of the Bishop of Maryland in the public square. Meaning, it was a cue that if I spent just about all of my time only in the churches and the congregations of this great diocese, I'm not doing my job fully. There's a public role. And one of the, in the ordination service for bishops, one of the lines where I have to answer, I will, God being my helper. And that is, will you work for the poor? And will you be the voice of those who have no helper? That's in the Book of Common Prayer.
It's a powerful charge.
It really is, which is to say, there's a role for all of us there, for lay and clergy and other, but it's right there in the ordination vows of a bishop. You have to stand up for the poor, to stand up for the forgotten, the dispossessed, the voiceless. And so I've tried to do that too in various ways in the diocese. And sometimes people loved it, and sometimes people didn't love it. And when they didn't love it, it's like, well, Bishop, just stick to praying and spiritual.
Right. Be a comfortable bishop.
Yes, but that's not following the way of Jesus. So that was the beginning of it, and those are things that I've been about. And then the diocese stepped in a Horizons 2015 process to come up with goals that we wanted to do. Some we made and some we didn't. But every institution and every individual has goals. I have goals for this Lenten season, and I was saying to someone today, unlike last Lent, I was lickety-split on my disciplines, but already now it's been about a week since Ash Wednesday, and I have failed miserably. I wanted to get to my prayer beads every day, which is the Anglican rosary, but also a discipline of playing the piano, of going through the Lenten hymns, and I still got to get to that. So that's a little bit about how we began anyway.
Well, it really strikes me, Bishop, that when you talked about recovering and enhancing the public role of the bishop,
Yes.
serving the poor,
Right.
the people who are neglected, the people who are forgotten,
Yes.
that really dovetails for me into the work that you have spearheaded, this important work of reparations in our diocese. And I see a real nexus there. Would you speak about that work, and so many people misunderstand, so many white people like me misunderstand what reparations is about. Would you please speak to that?
Yeah, a lot of people misunderstand white, black, or any ethnic or racial group. Well, first of all, it's a biblical mandate. That is to say, going back to the Old Testament prophets, Isaiah chapter 58, he talked about the people of Israel wanting to return. They were in captivity in Babylon, and they wanted to return to their homes, their homeland. And the prophet was saying, but one of the reasons why you disintegrated, that you're in a position you are now, is because of injustice. Israel had gotten very self-satisfied that, oh, look how God has blessed us, because it was pretty wealthy at that time. But they neglected justice. They neglected the widows and the orphans. You see that phrase a lot in the Old Testament. But what about the widows? What about the orphans? These are the ones who are not powerful. They had no other recourse. And God kept saying to God's people, you got to care for them. You got to care for them. And so that's where you find that phrase, go and mend what has been broken. And the phrase was, you shall be called the repairers of the breach, the restorers of streets to live in, to repairers of the breach. Now, what's the breach? Well, we have a breach in this nation, and it's been around since its inception. It resulted in, first of all, the near distinction of many of the first peoples. So we worship on land that was first settled by the Piscataway and the Piscataway, the Susquehannock, and the Nintendo peoples. And sure enough, in this diocese, it's part of the reparations process. We have been getting in touch with some of the descendants of those lands.
I didn't know that. That is fantastic.
Yes, it's not very public. Here we are, Christ Church, on your podcast. You'll see more in the future, because it's the establishing of relationships, and it's just a way of saying, no, we remember.
There is repairing to do.
There's repairing to do with that.
There is repairing to do with that.
That's
yes.
right. That's not the reparations that address slavery and African Americans, but intersectionality. A lot of issues relate to each other. So, and so that was about 300 years almost of enslaving people. And then for the next 100 or so years after the end of slavery, to let's just say the late 60s or 77, early 70s, when a number of the laws, when most of the laws of segregation were taken down, people of African descent could not get a good education, would not get good health care, no good housing, discrimination at every turn, couldn't get good jobs. It was a never-ending cycle. And what we know is that generational wealth is handed down. Now, obviously there are disruptions, but even ownership of homes and all of that. And I could just name so many cases where there was a privilege of being a white person. But if you were dark like me with my beautiful black skin, my parents, especially my grandparents, had nothing. And they will tell you stories. They had nothing to hand down. Now you multiply that by millions. And why is that the case? Because after slavery, there was talk even about how can we, if we release the slaves, we release them to what? And so one of the schemes was 40 acres and a mule. President Lincoln was thinking that might be a good solution. But his vice president, Andrew Johnson, who may have been the worst president this nation has seen. He was impeached and all that. But he was also a Southern sympathizer. That was going nowhere. You give the slaves nothing. In fact, you aid and abet policies to say without calling it slavery, they still will be dependent upon the former owners for livelihood. The only reparations that was given were to some slave plantation owners who got monies from the government for the destroyed lands. Reparations is not new to this nation, and there have been reparations for various groups, repairing, and for good reason. There were a number of monetary attempts with Native Americans with mixed success. And Japanese who were interned. It's not unknown around the world, people of Jewish descent in Germany, they were recompensed for losses during Nazism. It's known in so many places. Not unknown in America, except when it came to blacks. Nothing. And there were other proposals too, before emancipation and afterwards. But our nation as a whole and its institutions said, we're not going to give them a dime, even though we stole from them for 250 to 300 years. We stole. We stole their labor, we stole their lives, and we didn't pay for it. Well, what we learned in Sunday school a long time ago, if you steal something from someone, you pay it back, or you make restitution. And here's the important thing, and I'm going to end soon because this I could go on forever.
It's a very important subject.
Yeah. But here's the important thing. Everybody, most everybody, wants racial reconciliation. We want to all get along. And Americans are basically a good people when it comes to what's fair, what's just. Almost everybody I run into wants to do the fair and just thing for everyone. But until we address that issue that has resulted in millions of African Americans entrapped in cycles of poverty, violence, and bigotry, we will never be racially reconciled. African Americans have basically forgiven this country a long time ago. We're very patriotic. I'm patriotic. I love this country. I have issues with it, as with many people, whether white or black. But I love this country. And this country stole from my ancestors. That means forgiveness. We've forgiven. We've forgiven the churches. We've forgiven the clubs and all that. It doesn't mean we're reconciled.
Well, that's, I think, a really important point.
Yes. Reconciliation. A lot of people, and unfortunately, a lot of people are of whiter hue. They want reconciliation on the cheap.
Well, there are white people who say, why should I do anything about this? I haven't discriminated.
Yes.
I didn't live back in that time.
Absolutely.
I've done nothing.
Right.
So what do you say to answer that?
Well, here's the thing. Are we in a mess or not? Yes. Polls continually show it. We've inherited a mess. We didn't invent it. We didn't cause it. But we can either perpetuate in a system of injustice that doesn't recognize the theft, or we can try to address it. And so that means all of us are in the same pot. Whether I'll say we're all in the same boat. Some of us came over on the Mayflower. Some of us came over on slave boats. Some of us came over streams in the southern border. Some of us came on boats in the immigration waves of the 19th and 20th centuries. But whatever boat we came on, we're in the same boat now. And it affects us all. So it's going to take all of us to fix it. My parents came from nothing, and they worked hard and left us with something. But reparations is not about helping me or helping my kids. I don't need a dime. I don't want a dime. But I'm thinking about those who've been left behind.
Mm-hmm. The poor and the neglected.
The poor and the neglected,
right?
Disproportionately black. And so it's going to take all of us. And if you say, no, it's not my responsibility, and that's where we have an issue. It's not about guilt. No one should feel guilt about slavery, or no one here enslaved people. And I just talked to a guy last week who yeah, in this diocese. He's a lay leader, really good guy. And he said, yeah, Bishop, my ancestors actually owned slaves. He doesn't feel good about that. But I kept saying, this is not about guilt. It's about responsibility. But it's not yours alone. It's all of us. So I've been both a victim of 250 years plus of slavery and another 100 and some of discrimination. That's a lot of centuries of discrimination. And you're not going to think, oh, this is all going to be solved overnight. but I'm both a victim of it, but also I have a responsibility. So the reparations fund, I'm paying into it. My people didn't cause slavery, but I'm part of the solution. And so I don't care if you're a recent graduate or you came over to Mayflower, you have a responsibility. I'm sorry, or a recent immigrant. You have a responsibility. And we all, and that's what I want to preach, individual and corporate responsibility. The responsibility of the Episcopal Church in this state is more than even most. It was an Anglican colony before the Roman Catholics came and the others. And we were the primary beneficiaries among all the churches of slavery and discrimination. Millions. And so when we said, let's do this. Let's start with a seed fund of $1 million and start investing in the impoverished Black community. And we've done that now for a couple of years. And you should see the tears in the eyes of people in these community groups who are getting a check from the Episcopal Diocese of Maryland with crying for two reasons. One, thank you for being honest. That this isn't a gift. This is part of what was owed. And then two, thank you for not forgetting about us and knowing that your institution benefited. Who can be against that? So I know a lot of people have problems with it, and sometimes they're in an echo chamber of news sources that will say, oh, now Black people just want us check, and haven't we done enough, and all that stuff. I'm just saying, read your Bible. This is a biblical thing. Read the Bible and see what we're doing, and then see if you're against it. Okay, that's it.
Well, there's so much more we could talk about on this issue because it's of central importance, but our time is coming short. But I want to ask, because this also, I think, relates to the issue of the Sutton Scholars and the reparations work and the future of the diocese.
Yes.
As you turn the reins over to a new bishop and these programs, these big programs that you have initiated here as part of your charge. Yeah. So what do you see and what do you hope for the future, and maybe what are some of the challenges for the diocese that you see?
Well, first of all, let me say this is the best diocese in the Episcopal Church.
Well, I would agree, but I'm very prejudiced on that score.
We ran the data through the computer and voila. Obviously it's my opinion too. But also there are a lot of people around the church who look to Maryland for leadership on issues that we were talking about, reparations and racial reconciliation. But that's not all we've been up to. Yes, we began the Sutton Scholars Program. I fought the naming of it, but the committees and the board and the standing committee thought, oh, put his name on it so he'll raise money for it.
Did it work?
Yes, thank you. We need every gift, and people have been generous. We're the only religious institution in the city of Baltimore, in the state of Maryland, that they allow to go into the schools and work with their kids. Because
that's saying something.
They trust us, and they know we're not proselytizing, but we're just doing it out of love and just making sure that it's part of our contribution after now 75 plus years of taking resources out of the city of Baltimore, the biggest repository of poverty in the state.
Yes.
And putting money back into it and investing in its young people. But that's not all we've been doing too. We, since I've been bishop, we've sunk about $10 million. We've raised about $10 million for the Claggett Center.
So tell the people listening a little bit what the
Claggett Conference Center is our diocesan center. Used to be a plantation.
I did not know
There's
that.
a slave gravesite on it, and we've built a memorial there to it. And every time I go out there, that I get a chance, I walk down that hill, down that lonely trail, and I go to a slave grave site where you will see just a stone saying an unnamed enslaved person.
Wow.
We don't even have all their names, but we have the area there. And I just let them know, some of my ancestors, we're trying to fix it. We're trying to fix it. And so, but that is a center for spiritual renewal and growth and all that. We believe in that, and it's where our kids can go and adults. So we've done a lot of that. We started the College for Congregational Development here in the diocese. We are now one of the, I think it's 4 centers for that across the nation. Maryland is one of them, where we, and you'll see more of this in the future, we're helping congregations as much as we can, small, large, and in between, to be all that they can be. And we've done a whole lot of other things too in the environment. I've spoken a lot about firearms reduction and what we can do with that. So there have been a lot of things that have been going on. Looking into the future, good gosh, the transition. So I stepped down April 27. And that's when I will escort my successor, Carrie Schofield Broadbent, to the bishop's chair in the cathedral. I've been looking forward to this for many years. And now, even thinking about it now, I'm going to start to tear up. Not because, oh, I wish I hadn't done that, but because it's been an incredible honor, and the memories of sometimes even alone going into that chair at the cathedral and praying, Lord, help me, help me. Carrie Schofield Broadbent, she is the right person for this diocese. We're having a ball working together for these months in the handoff, and just knowing her and what her interests are, and she is really a congregational development guru, and smart in ways that I'm not smart, in asking questions. Yeah, she's young, I'm old. That's not a big surprise. But ever since she started working with us, I sleep like a baby. So finally, I'm going, after this, I'm going to Chautauqua Institution. I've already begun in my rolling retirement. I've been appointed senior pastor of Chautauqua Institution. That is one of the nation's leading ecumenical and increasingly interfaith places that was originally started as a Methodist camp, but now it's a movement and a big conference center, and it gets world's thought leaders on issues, big issues of the day, from the standpoint of religion, the humanities, the sciences, philosophy, and arts and recreation. So if you've never been there, come and visit and say hi to me and Sonia. We'll be spending our summers up there.
How wonderful.
Yes.
How wonderful. So, Bishop Sutton, we have to wrap up.
Yes.
But are there any final thoughts you want to leave with the people who will be listening to this podcast?
Yes. One, I love you. I love you. And I have felt the love of this diocese. I really have. Even in the tough times. And there have been tough times. We've been shaken by some events that were even beyond our control, especially the very big one back when the former suffragan bishop had fallen off the rails and ended up in the death of killing that bicyclist. That was the toughest time. And we've been reeling for that for a long time. Healing takes a while. But it is, what I want to leave with the diocese is, thank you for loving me. Thank you for supporting me. And I really love this diocese. And even though this is a very, very tough time to be church in a rapidly secularizing society, in an era where young people especially, but not only them, want nothing to do with the church, we can put a lot of money into thinking, oh, what does my particular congregation need? But here's my charge. Unless you have some way as a church of saying, every month, what have we done to address these issues of violence, bigotry, and poverty in our communities? Then I think prophets will be saying to us, like they did in the Old Testament, you've missed it and God is displeased. So that's my charge. Remember the poor.
Thank you so much. What a great and powerful charge to leave with us. Thank you, Bishop Sutton, for being here at Christ Church
Thank you.
today. Thank you.
All right.